watching the dog show. Another new episode is coming up tonight.
It's the dog show. It's the dog show. It's the dog show. It's the dog show.
You're listening to the one and only Dog Show. Your hosts, Troop Brinson and Smooch Moncrief.
Just two dudes talking Georgia football.
Welcome, dog fans, to the one and only Dog Show with Troop and Smooch. And guess what, dog fans? Game week.
Game
Smooch,
week, my brother. It is here. It is here. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's been a couple months now, and we've been able to watch the dogs practice and hear all the interviews. Some good stuff come out this week. We did watch some of those guys that normally don't talk to the media, but you're starting to see more voices and more leaders
mentally wrong.
take a step out. So that's kind of what we want to see Saturday. We're anxious to get to Athens. The weather is going to be sublime.
We have earned
Mid
it.
60s, sunny, and get a chance to see the red against the black.
100%. You know, what you want to see at a spring game is a team identity. We didn't really have one last year, and that showed up, you know. And so you're not really looking for all these specifics, just the team identity. This is what this team is going to be about. That's what you're hoping to see. But, man, we have earned it with the weather. As many years as we have spent sweltering in the beating down sun to watch this spring game, we will be actually now, as the show grows, people, we're getting better and better seats to these things. So y'all keep watching. We got prime location this year, and like you said, the weather is going to. We have earned it. We've earned this good weather. I'm excited.
Yes, and we're going to talk about that game and some focus on position groups in this episode. And then we're going to, it is real early as the team hasn't really taken a shape. We don't know a lot of things, but we're going to talk a little bit about a couple teams that we're really interested in seeing how they've developed in their quarterback position and their roster. And as we move back and welcome back Tennessee and Florida into the actual discussion of a game that Georgia now can say, okay, well, we got to play a good game this year. It's not just going to be you can just walk in. So we're going to talk a little bit about their rosters. And
you mean they may actually help with our strength of schedule for the first time in 4 years? That would be awesome.
Maybe if all things go just right for those teams. Anyway, it is good to see those two teams taking a step back into the because Georgia. Some fans just want a cakewalk through the season, and before we'd won that national championship a few years ago, I guess in 2021, we were kind of whatever it took to get that monkey off our back. We were fine.
Sure.
Now it's like these schedules that last year, probably the toughest schedule Georgia's ever played. I was so looking forward to that. This year, same thing. Was so looking forward to the marquee games, all the big games. So I'm not. That doesn't bother me that some of these teams that have been down lately are kind of getting their stuff together. Hopefully, because I like to have good games every week. And so we're going to talk a little bit about those two schools. But first, let's talk about the spring game. Now, the word is, obviously, you guys know, no TV. And I hate, if you haven't heard that yet, you will not be able to pull this game up on TV and watch it.
All right. No streaming. Yeah.
No. And so you're going to rely on people like us.
Yep.
If you're not there, you're going to rely on people like us to send you short video clips and to analyze what we saw and our takes. And that's going to be a lot going on with that during the game and after the game. But so no TV whatsoever.
What I've noticed, Troop Brinson, is the spring game is becoming more and more of just a straight up scrimmage type of practice. It always has been, but it really is taking more of that identity. And I think this is just another thing. I think Kirby, he goes to the spring game and he watches other teams poach his players shortly after every year. You got the portal opening up here soon. And I think that's the reason for it. So yeah, we'll put out as many vids as we can. It's hard to send vids from the stadium. That's actually really difficult to do, but we will certainly put together a package and get some stuff up for you guys with some analysis and some video, at least following the spring game.
Yep. And we heard that there will be, of course, the red versus the black. Mike Bobo and Travaris Robinson are one side, and I think Hartley and Schumann.
I think
so.
that's right.
Bobo and T-Rob versus Hartley and Schumann, and they're going to try to make this game look like as much of a game as possible. It looks like it probably won't take quite as long as some other games. It might be in and out in 2 hours. We kind of anticipate that. No TV timeouts, obviously.
Oh, that'll be nice.
But
I didn't. Yeah.
But it's going to look more like a game than a practice. And so you Georgia fans, I was worried a little bit about that and how spring games have transpired. Last year, there were teams that had some kind of weird rules.
Yeah, Georgia will not be playing two-hand touch on a 50-yard field. I'll tell you that.
So, yeah. And some teams have, of course, aren't having a spring game this year. And it may trend that way just for various reasons if things don't change on this landscape. But it's going to look like a game Saturday afternoon, and we can't wait for it. We're going to be out in the sunshine. Bring that sunscreen and sunglasses, of course. You can watch. The sun's going to be right in your face. 1 o'clock kickoff. Is that right, Smooch?
That is correct, good sir.
Sounds right. And as we look more at that game, I think I'm always trying to decide who I want to see. And I'm looking up numbers because you got people who switch numbers. You got people who are players who have new numbers, young players who haven't been on the field before, and trying to pick those out. So I'm always looking at which position group is something I really want to see that I maybe I have questions about. And obviously last year there were questions about the quarterback position, the offensive line. But I think going into the spring game, we were not worried whatsoever about the line of scrimmage. And defensively, we had some guys, of course, like Jalon Walker and Michael Williams that we knew we could count on them and good linebacking core too. We'll have that again this year. There'll be some new defensive linemen that I really want to see, but there's a couple position groups that I want to watch in extended play, because even if you feel like Gunnar Stockton is the guy and you just want to see Pugs and what he can do with his own team as well, as he has one of those squads, we didn't see a whole lot of Stockton during the season. And what we saw during last year's spring game was very limited in how he ran the offense.
Yeah.
We saw a lot of things with Gunnar last year that kind of formed our opinion on what he would be if he was ever the quarterback for Georgia. And it looked like kind of a quarterback who was a run pass option quarterback who would leave the pocket quickly and get outside and make defenders make a choice, make some decisions. But that limited the ability to a lot of passing routes, if you ask me. That won't be the problem this year. And plus getting to see our first glimpse, because Puglisi was hurt last spring.
Yes.
Our first chance to see the backup quarterback and see just some of that skill set that he has that we're so excited about down the road.
Yeah, what we're hearing is that, and you really touched on something I want to see. I want to see if Gunnar really is entrenched at that number one spot the way we're led to believe, that it's his team. That's what we're hearing from practice. We'll see how it looks on the field. I will tell you that the rules and the general style of play set up to favor Puglisi, right? I mean, when you're a running quarterback in a Kirby spring game, you're not going to get to run. Anytime he breaks the line of scrimmage, you're just going to blow the whistle. And so in the hopes of protecting. So we'll see. Does Gunnar stay, camp in the pocket and make those throws? Is it rollouts? Is he getting to his third and fourth read before he pulls it down? Those types of things. That's what you're looking to see. With Pug, it's kind of like the first time we saw Matt Stafford. You just want to see him uncork that cannon. You just want to see what he can do with the ball in his hand. And like I say, he is more of not that he's unathletic, so he's certainly not, but he is a guy that relies on his arm primarily, which if you saw some of the footage we put out this week for some practice footage we came across, he's got a sick arm. So those types of things, I want to see what the disparity is between number one and number two on the depth chart at the quarterback position, Drew.
Yeah, good call. You made a good point about you won't be able to see a running quarterback really excel. And so he has to work on some of those other things, which is okay. Both of these quarterbacks, I do believe, have to learn a little touch. I know Gunnar, when we did see him play last year, everything was a fast ball. I mean, he looks like it, just the aesthetics of his throw looks like he's just giving it everything on every pass. And some of those passes, even the short, 5-7 yard passes, he was sticking it in there.
That wheel route to Cash Jones, I can't believe he didn't take fingers off. That was brutal.
Yeah. So both those guys, I think, as you kind of, take a breath and get relaxed and actually play football, and it's not just coming at you so fast. Those are some of the nuances that you can focus on and get better at in game situations. I'm sure they do it in practice, but when the game hits and people are running at you and everything's going on, yeah, these guys are just letting it rip.
Yeah.
And so we'll see some of that. And I will be excited, of course, to see. I think we both are, because one of the biggest problems last year was our receiving core. And I didn't anticipate it. I really didn't anticipate it being a big issue last year, but it was. Yeah. And we just totally remade that wide receiver room, and plus the tight end room, and just added a couple more just studs in Barbour and Elias Williams. So I want to see all the receivers. I want to see Talon Taylor. I want to see. Can we name some of these guys who just came in? C.J. Wiley,
Landon Rolden.
There's a couple. There's a few guys like that we haven't even seen. And see Noah Thomas. Yeah. And Kobe Young's back on the team and looking like he's ready to have a great season. So lots of weapons, right? Lots of weapons, and we want to see how these quarterbacks utilize them and what they look like in the open field, because Georgia hasn't had that receiver who just what about Branch? Zach Branch.
Zachariah Branch. Yeah. When you throw to me, I'll talk about him. I got some stuff.
So yeah, I want to see those guys. I want to see the playmaking ability. I want to see the hands, and then I want to see him turn a 8-yard pass into a 50-yard play. So we need to see some of the game-breaking type abilities that Georgia's going to need next year.
Yeah, this time of year, someone always says one thing while they're trying to cover up everything else and vague speak, coach speak and all that. Someone says something that stays with you, and it turns out to be something through the season. And the player it was about is Zachariah Branch. And the statement was, we trust him as much as we trust Gunner with this offense. That is an enormous statement. If that is true, and he has already assimilated himself into this offense and knows when and where to be, what assignments he has, who to block on what play, what his responsibility is on every play, we're already hearing about the insane route running and the ability after the catch that, as fast as he looks and as fast as he is, you can throw that out the window because the guy's just a football player. That is what we are hearing constantly. I don't know what kind of clown show he was involved in last year, but for a guy to make the waves he's making in Athens right now, this is the real deal, earning all of those 5 stars. Anyway, just to tag on to the rest of it, when it comes to wide receivers, even pass catchers, like you were saying with Barbour and Delp and Riddell and Williams, all these guys coming in, I look at them as pass catchers, and I just want to see depth throughout. I think last year there was just no one to step up. You kind of had the same level of play from top to bottom, and I want to see that play elevated, and where you're still seeing players like a Talon Taylor. Maybe Talon doesn't start. He might, but maybe he doesn't. Maybe he's second or third string. Let's see him come in and make a contested 50-50 ball catch, coming in at the 2, 3, or even 4 spot as a receiver. Those types of things are what you want to see, because we did not have depth and we did not have quality at those pass catcher positions last year. And it certainly seems like it's been remedied, and there's just talent everywhere. C.J. Wiley and Talon Taylor, this is probably going to be one of your better freshman duos since back to Pickens and Blaylock back in the day.
And names I didn't mention, one of my favorite players that I rooted for last year and talked about him often. He didn't play a lot. It's Kobe White. Want to see him. He might be another player that takes a step. He should.
He had a big TD last week. Yeah.
And we don't know anything. I don't know anything about Nitro Tuggle and what's going on with him. He got in a little problem driving way too fast.
Yeah.
Got a ticket. And so I don't know what his status is for this game or going forward. And if he's going to be one of those guys that hits the portal after spring, I don't know. It kind of feels like maybe because he did. And he changed his mind earlier. So I got a feeling that
there's just always something going on with him.
Yeah.
It's not
got
ever.
If he didn't have such a great name, we probably would be like,
right. Nitro, and then the greatest Atlanta Falcon defender ever. All right there in one name.
Yeah, and didn't mention Robert, the third tight end. He may, who knows what he's going to do this year. We hear a lot about is Riddell. He's a guy that I read about him almost every practice report. They're going to use him in that 3 tight end set. They've shown you in the past Georgia will run 3 tight ends.
Yeah,
expect it. And so Riddell is another guy who's going to have an opportunity this year to make a name for himself.
Yes.
Talking about receivers, I did hear, I think on an interview with Zachariah Branch, who said that one of the main differences in terms of learning Georgia's offense is they do a lot of hand signals at the line of scrimmage in terms of, I guess, some of the decisions you have to make in routes. I don't really understand that part, but that was what he said, is that the hand signals are something that he's had to adjust to. There's a lot more. Georgia uses that a lot more in their offense.
Yeah, well, exactly. If you look at some of the interceptions that Georgia has thrown, the first Carson Beck interception against Alabama, that was somebody missing a hand signal. There was another one, I want to say against Texas, same type of thing. The receivers have immense responsibility in a Kirby Smart offense. I mean, huge responsibility. And so if you can get that, we got so spoiled watching Rosemy Jackson and Ladd McConkey know what they were supposed to be doing. And we got so spoiled by that. And Brock Bowers, we saw it last year, that you've got to know what – we had players firing off the line, running the wrong route, and Carson throwing to where they were supposed to be and hitting a defender right between the numbers. And then, Carson would follow it up with his own boneheaded play later. But, yeah, the idea that Branch is making that scaling that hump quicker than some of the other players is good news.
Yeah. Now, in terms of running backs in a game like this, they're not going to put those players at risk and give them, 20, 25 carries. You're not going to see that. We do want to see maybe explosive play or two from Nate Frazier. It seemed like last year he looked so good making his cuts, very decisive, but he rarely ever broke anything like one of those, because those iconic running backs are going to do that. It's a matter of time. We didn't see that last year. Maybe that was just by chance, or the offensive line maybe didn't get him a whole lot of room. Maybe he was just a freshman and wasn't always in the right place at the right time either. So we want to see him get a few carries and do something explosive. And Bo Walker is the name we hear a lot about. So we don't know we only know what we read and what people are saying. So get the first chance to see him and see if he's got that that thing that you can see once they make a move on the field. In a game like this, though, I tell you, the running back who is going to do something electric, it's going to be Dwight Phillips. Watch it. He's going to be. Yeah. He's going to take a little swing pass, and just that electric speed. He's going to do something that you're going to say, "Wow!" Even like, was it 2 years ago? You named this player earlier. You were talking about it. Who was the guy who the returner who left Georgia?
Muse. Malachi, last name was Muse.
Yeah. And so he did all that, and he wasn't really a weapon during the season. I mean, but in a spring game where you're pretty much dividing your team in half, he's going to get these kind of players are going to get an opportunity to do some big things, and hopefully it translates later. And I think Dwight Phillips is going to be a player Georgia uses to his abilities this coming year, in the next couple of years. But you might see him do something with that speed, given the opportunity and giving a few touches and catching the ball in space if that's what they do. I'd love to see him use a player like that, get him out on a non-cornerback or a player that is not, shouldn't be covering him, and use him like Georgia's used running backs in the past for a advantageous matchup, and see him get the ball in space and use his speed, because we've seen him. He scored a touchdown last year on an end around. Yeah. But I'd like to see what happens. It's going to be something worth watching, worth checking out Saturday.
It's a different type of speed. There's, Georgia's littered this year with playmakers with 4.4 and 4.3 speed. That is flying. There's a difference when you're talking about Dwight Phillips' speed. Now, then the 40, he may time about the same thing. The difference is he's just getting going at 40 yards. When you're talking about the world-class genetics that Phillips has, we're talking speed for days, meaning if he's even, he's leaving, as they say. And so we haven't seen, Arian flashed that, but he couldn't put it together with the ball skills. And with Dwight Phillips, you're going to see a different type of speed if they can just figure out how to get him the ball in a situation. But you talk about those big plays, which you want to see. He may be the running. I agree with you. He may be the running back that makes the over the top play Saturday.
Little wheel route or just a little swing pass, those things. Get him on a linebacker, let him make a move. And that's those electric skill players, you're okay with a one-on-one situation. They are very good at making that first guy miss. And so I'm looking forward to that. But we'll have some clips. We'll have a lot of commentary and analyze what we saw and get it to you guys and just be our opinion. Because we're just two dudes talking Georgia football.
There you go.
Two dudes
But
talking Georgia
we'll definitely do that. And I do want to move forward though, as we talk about a couple teams I mentioned a few minutes ago, and welcome back to the conversation. I know Tennessee doesn't think they ever left the conversation, but Tennessee's had a much rougher run of it the past 25 years in Florida. Florida's had some flashes and some good teams. Tennessee just recently, just the last couple years, they really get people's attention. And so we're going to talk about them. Tennessee did win 10 games last year, made the college football playoffs. Florida exceeded expectations just by winning 8 because they had been a 6-win team the past 3 years before then, 6 and 7 about every year. And they moved it up to 8, and they started to recruit a little bit better. And sometimes it's not just recruiting better, but you got to have players that pan out.
Right.
You could have this Lagway kid, and everybody be excited about him, and then we get him on the field, he's missing something, and it never turns that corner. And but I think he may be a keeper.
Lagway's a keeper. Lagway is one of the. I think every team in the country would take Lagway. I didn't get a lot of game film last year, but just that it factor, it's there. You hear all what these kids can do in high school and what they do at practice and all that, and they get on the field and you don't see it. You saw it with him. I think that Georgia's in for one heck of a game this year at Florida.
The problem with Florida, and that's what we want to talk about, because those teams both have very interesting quarterback positions that gets your attention, and it looks like they have the ability to propel their team to have just one of those seasons where they're right in the mix to win games, win elimination games, and win a championship. It takes that for the most part. But I think Florida has a lot farther to go as a roster than Tennessee. Tennessee's been building, and they really thought, Smooch, that last player I'm looking at some stats right now, but that last player to put him over the top was that quarterback position. And because they had Milton wasn't it. Hooker was a good quarterback, but their roster quite wasn't where it needed to be. And then Milton, of course, he was just a big arm. But then Nico was the player that everybody was focused on. And, at this point last season, Smooch, we've seen Nico
we'll put that up right here. Yeah.
Yeah. At this point last season, we'd seen Nico in some mop-up duty. He looked terrific.
Right.
He looked terrific last year early in their schedule when they were playing these directional schools that had no chance, and they were covering receivers, and he was playing pitch and catch, and it looked like, and they were through the roof. He had no ceiling. There was nothing that he couldn't do. Honestly, there was nothing that the Tennessee fans thought that he couldn't do. He was the best player in college football.
The best player in college football.
Probably the 99% of those guys. And when they started playing teams of good talent, some of those problems showed up when they had defenders that could cover their receivers and put pressure on the quarterback. You saw a different quarterback, and I think Lagway was the opposite. He was a guy who, as the season progressed, he got better and better.
Yeah. So before the season last year, we always talk about Tennessee. Always says national championship this year when they have a laundry list of ifs. And last year, one of the ifs we listed in the preseason for Tennessee was Nico. And true, the mouth breathers and the illiterate went absolutely nuts on it. And I hope I can find it. One brilliant Tennessee fan put, tell me you don't know anything about college football. These idiots actually said Nico is a, quote, if. And we said, yeah, that's exactly what it is because he hasn't done anything yet. And that's exactly what we saw last year. Yes, Nico, number one player in the country. Nico, 6'5", 6'6", great arm, colorful personality. Yes, all those things. He has never put it together in a meaningful football game. Not once. He has not stepped up and put his team on his shoulders. And he, last year, they limped around at times on offense. Nico was still an if, whereas Lagway, you said earlier, Florida has further to go than Tennessee. That is 100% true. But I think Florida has a greater superstar at the quarterback position, potentially, than Tennessee. I don't see anything in Nico's play on the field that would tell me this kid is destined for stardom. Now, if I look at his measurables, I'd say this kid could be the best player in football. But he hasn't shown anything along that line so far. So I would say Florida's got further to go and a better quarterback than Tennessee. Tennessee's a little closer, but does not have the quarterback position.
Well, and they could totally flip that or change that as
cigarettes and drinking gallons
I always
of
give
tea.
these guys a lot of room. And this will be Nico's third year in the program. So, that he could take a huge step. We don't know that. We thought Carson Beck was going to take a huge step last year, and he didn't. But last season, so let's look at some of these scores. And this is what got because they already had decided he was the next one. And
Right.
as they started the season, it was 69 points up on Chattanooga, 51 against NC State on the road, 71 against Kent State. And then they were off. It was like
That's the Heupel special, man. Beat up those bad teams.
That really is. That's what he does. And we said that. We've been saying that for several years now since he came.
Hooker.
We could see that. Yeah, you beat up on the teams that don't match up or can't match up athletically. As soon as there's a team that matches up athletically, it's a whole different ballgame. And then he went to, and it was still some good games, but just the offensive output was not what Tennessee thought it was going to continue to be all season. And that was a team really carried by Kelvin Sampson. Was it not Kevin? That's
Dylan Sampson.
Dylan, yes, not the Houston basketball coach. But yeah, it was the Sampson kid who had a sensational year at running back, and that carried that offense. Nico should have, by all intents and purposes, with that running game, should have went off. He should have went off. He looked, like you said, there was something missing. And you can have all the measurables, but there was something tentative about him, something a little cautious about him on the field. That, and we see him in practice, see how far he can throw it and how cool he looks standing up there, with his shades on and looking like Hollywood. But dude, put him in a game where you got a team that's coming after you and it's trouble, and they could not. They scored 25 against against Oklahoma. Oklahoma, that was their first. That was a home game for Oklahoma. So they beat them 25-15. Then they lost to Arkansas, which is inexcusable. That was their first loss of the season. Lost 19. Only scored 14 points against Arkansas. That was the first
Arkansas.
crack.
Yeah, that's when you saw
the first little crack. How? Tell me how. And then they only scored 23 against Florida. Beat them. They did beat them, and they did beat Alabama. They scored 24 points, and beat Kentucky. Scored 28 points. Only scored 33 against Mississippi State. Only scored 17 against Georgia. And you started to, that was just some of the things we saw. They did get hammered in their postseason against the eventual national champion team. Ohio State beat them 42-17. But anyway, I think we fall down as on the same side of Nico's got a lot to prove, a lot to show.
Right.
And I think I haven't heard a lot from Tennessee fans this year. You told me before in the pre-show that they're gonna play around with with their hopes and dreams and everything, and think that it was just a playbook situation where he wasn't given the full playbook yet. Right?
That's the thing every year, man. They'll come up and say, "Oh, well, Nico this year, he's getting the full playbook. Heupel's going to let him have all the bells and whistles that they gave to Hooker. That's what they said last year. They're coming up on it this year. So, yeah, there's always a narrative as to why they scored 16 points in their biggest games last year. And it's because, Nico wasn't ready for the full playbook. Now he is. And it's going to be, it's just going to be all systems go. But no, they're going to be, we now have data points for Heupel, right? 70 points against Kent State, 14 points against
Arkansas.
Against Arkansas. That is the MO. That is what this offense is. And guys, when we said this 3 years ago, you lost your mind. It is a gimmick offense. That's the reason it can't win big games. It will be obsolete and out of college football in 2 more years. 100%.
Yeah, they won 10 games. Give them credit. They beat Alabama and beat Oklahoma. Those are some big wins. Mm-hmm. Just winning the game. It was more – I think Tennessee sometimes would rather look pretty and score 50 points than to win anything of significance. So they were really struggling with that. And like I said, with that running back Sampson, Nico should have been able to just pick people apart.
Yeah, when you've got a dominant running game, which they did, you've got to score. I mean, you've got to have open receivers, and you got to hit them with the ball. They did not do it.
Yeah, like I said, things can change, and Nico can prove
He's
that
got all the talent in the world.
Yeah. He's beautiful. He's a beautiful athlete. Love to watch him move and pass, and it looks effortless. So we'll see if that translates. And with Lagway, and I'm curious to see how he does, and when he's got a lot of expectations on him now. Mm-hmm. So we'll see. They got a very tough schedule, Smooch. Last year, Florida was just about as bad as Georgia. Their schedule. Let's look at their schedule this year. They went 8-5 last season. I think 4-4 in the SEC. Let's see. LIU, that'd be an easy one. South Florida. Mm-hmm. And then the third game of the year, they on the road to LSU. And LSU's got Nussmeier coming back. He is that team is. We predicted them to do great things last year. We might have just been a year early for them. Yeah. I think he's one of the best returning quarterbacks in the SEC.
I would agree.
Then they go to Miami, and that's going to be the Carson Beck Miami team. So that's going to be fun to watch. And, Carson Beck's a Florida guy anyway.
Hide your daughters. Here comes Carson, guys.
Then Florida goes to A&M. So they got, you can see it start to stack up. LSU, Miami, Tech. I missed the Texas game in between those. So they do host Texas, and with Arch Manning and Texas with a roster, that can beat them.
Yes.
A&M, I don't know what to expect from them. Then they have Georgia, of course, in November. Kentucky, Ole Miss. Those teams, I don't think Ole Miss is going to be the same kind of a dangerous team as they were last year.
They're due for a drop off. Yeah.
And then they do host Tennessee, so that's a November 22nd game.
Ooh.
I wonder if that's the Thanksgiving week game. Usually it's the next game, but we'll see.
Oh, that sounds like fun. Yeah, so, I think Florida, you and I were talking about this. I think we disagree a little bit. I see the Florida game, Georgia being more vulnerable against Florida this year than Tennessee. And I think you see, because Tennessee, where it falls on the schedule, Georgia's first test on the road at Knoxville with Alabama on the other side of it.
Well, a couple things with that, and I can see the thought process on both those things. That will be an early game again, Tennessee on the road, and it'll be a team that has a roster that is getting to the point where like I said, they won 10 games last year. They beat Alabama last year. They beat Oklahoma last year. So they're capable, very, very capable roster-wise now. And we told them 3 or 4 years ago, you can't skip steps. It takes years to build. They thought that first year that Heupel was there, second year Heupel was there. Okay, we're ready. We're here. No, it takes years in recruiting classes, stacking up top 10 recruiting classes, top 5 recruiting classes.
Come on,
if you really want to win a championship, and it takes time. So they've spent some time to get that together, and I don't know weapon wise at wide receiver what they have or who's replacing Sampson. I don't know that. Maybe we'll do some more in depth. It's still spring, so we got time to figure that out. But the thing about Florida, and I still don't like to hear. I still kind of shake my head and roll my eyes when Florida fans say, and I've heard some Georgia guys say it. Well, Georgia was in trouble against Florida last year. Like, if Lagway didn't get hurt, I'm like, he completed 2 passes. One of them was for 4 yards, and he had a busted coverage where he threw a 43-yard pass. It was a touchdown. Yes, that's all he did. So that's really stretching it to think that Lagway was going to be able to continue that. Who knows? Maybe he did, but that doesn't. Georgia was not in trouble in that game at that point. Come on, not. But I think Georgia will have more. I guess that game's in November 1st against Florida. They'll have a lot more idea on what Lagway's all about and about their team as well. Obviously Georgia's got a much better roster overall than Florida.
Right. Yeah.
And at that point, Gunnar Stockton may be the best quarterback in the SEC. We don't know. Yeah. And so it might not be as big an advantage at quarterback. That's really the only advantage they could point to. We got a better quarterback than you guys. That might not even be that big of an advantage come November.
It might not be an advantage at all. That is when we get to down the road, this is going to be Georgia has a greater discrepancy between their ceiling and their floor than I think ever had, and it rests on the shoulders of Gunnar Stockton. What do we have there? That is the entire season. The entire season is what do we have in Gunnar. That's it.
Yeah, it does. I really anticipate that offensive line, and I heard a pundit this week saying, well, Georgia is not as talented this year as they were last year. They're just not. They lost. They're going to this coming year. They're going to not even be as talented. So, what's your expectations if we? You don't know that. You don't know. So you got some spots right now. You figure that Georgia's. I don't know those names. They haven't.
They
done it
said
yet.
that in between 2021 and 2022 as well. Name one player on this new defense, the one that went undefeated the next year. Yeah.
Exactly. We had. I remember saying that we have a no-name defense. I don't know who these guys are. I don't know. You know, maybe by the end of the year I'll know who some of these players are, and they'll have a chance to make a name for themselves. And those years were like the iconic Georgia teams,
right.
The teams that go down in history as the best Georgia teams ever. But at this point in the season in spring, we didn't know that. We didn't know. Right. Georgia has some of those players that's the reason why this roster building thing is such a big deal. Why you keep stacking up sensational athletes and coaching them, because you don't know when they get a chance. Some of those guys are second year players that they take the biggest jump. So especially defensively, I think Georgia's got some players who could again make you remember that this is what we hang our hat on here at the University of Georgia is defensive personnel, defensive freaks. And you don't know that yet, guys.
And there's going to be one or two that come out of nowhere. There always are in years like this that aren't the sexy pick. They're a 3-star or an unheard of 4-star, and all of a sudden they show up and play a serious role.
Yeah, people may be talking about Jonas Ajayi as a first-round pick this time next year.
Sure.
You don't know.
Those
guys are talented enough to do that. Those are some guys who could step up who are in difference-making positions. This wide receiver core, if they just play to just a medium standard this year, they'll give Georgia an opportunity to score a lot of points. And so don't be so quick just because you don't know the names just yet to say this is a lesser talented Georgia team.
I agree. Yeah, withhold judgment on that till you've seen the product.
I think at wide receiver and offensive line, where Georgia did have some issues last year, you're going to see a big step forward. You're going to see more back to the Georgia standard. I just don't believe you're going to have back-to-back substandard seasons with those position groups. I don't see it at all, because I trust this coaching staff and I trust what they're going to focus on. And I may be proven wrong, but I don't think so. I think that you're going to have a really, really good offensive line this year, and that's not going to be an issue. And so that's where I fall. Like I said, I do laugh when Florida fans and some Georgia fans seem to think that Lagway was giving us trouble last year when he went out. He wasn't. He completed 2 passes.
I love the kid.
It wasn't like he was 15 out of 17 in the third quarter, late in the third quarter when he went out, and Georgia found a way to win because he went out. He got knocked out. No, that was not at all.
Yeah, there will have to be major upsets for Tennessee or Florida to beat Georgia, but you may have a better chance at that upset this year. That's all we're saying.
Yeah, I agree that it may happen, and the rosters. This is probably giving fodder for those fans. If I said the gap was closing, I think it's just the nature of college football right now that the gaps all over are closing.
Yes,
and so you'll see some of that. You'll see roster wise, and Florida and Tennessee have been down from traditional powerhouse teams, they've been down, and so they had nowhere to go but up. And
you are right about that.
Coaching staffs have slowly built the roster to compete. I'll give them that, to compete, and we'll see how that plays out. But that's what I got. Anything else on your mind to talk about, Smooch?
No, as we get into it more, I love talking about Tennessee because I think this season can go either way for Tennessee. I think if they miss the playoffs, Heupel's in trouble. I'm serious. I really do. I think if they make the playoffs, he's just fine. I just think that offense is going to – we'll talk about it more as we get going, but I'm real intrigued with Tennessee this year. If they come out and beat Georgia and win 12 games, it's fine. But this is a pivotal season for them. You can just feel it. Their eggs are in the Nico basket. They've been talking about it for 4 years. The time has come to cash in. It's got to be this year. And
it's right. They're right. It should be this year. Mm-hmm. It should be. If they can just duplicate what they did last year, if they beat Georgia, man, they might be on their way.
Yeah.
But and it sets up for them to have their best chance to beat Georgia in years. They can say like a couple of years ago with Hendon Hooker, they were so prepared then they thought that was their year.
Nah.
That was the year that Georgia was like, you ain't nobody beating us.
Yeah, you didn't belong. They did not belong on the field with Georgia in that game.
And so, but this, as a roster and as everything else with the quarterback position, should be their year. Mm-hmm. And a lot falls on Nico, and if he can prove to be that kind of one of one type player, we don't think so.
Yeah.
If he does, then they could have a special year this year. And it really starts with that game in Neyland, in the third game of the year. Like you said, we're gonna talk a lot more about that.
Let's go see a game in Sanford first. How about that?
We're gonna talk about some Georgia fans, or just some Georgia players, and what we see from that. Folks, please, if you're listening to us right now, check us out on YouTube. YouTube is where it's at. And give us some comments. Tell us what you think and what you think about this Georgia team. What you want to see Saturday. And what after you've seen it, what you think about that as well. Yeah. Give us a subscribe, give us a like, and man, we just can't wait to. This is really the start of the 2025 season.
We're here, man. We made it through. Now we got a little drought on the other side, but this will at least carry us. We got stuff to talk about after this weekend. So
that's right. We'll talk to you guys Saturday from the classic city in Athens. For Smooch Moncrief, this is Troop Brinson saying so long. We'll talk to you soon.
This is the Dog Show with Troop and Smooch.
It's the dog show. It's the dog show. It's the dog show. It's the dog show.
You're too stuck up your stupid butt heads to say anything relative to truth or smart, apparently.